What's up, fellow budget tone chasers? Welcome to one more video here at the channel. Today I'm going to try to do something a little bit more different. As you see, I'm not at home, so I'm starting this series of videos that is going to be a little bit more in the format of a talking head. But the idea is to try to cover some of the points that most of you can have some doubts and questions about it, do some listing videos to help you to choose better products to buy, and to talk a little bit about some things that sometimes you're not stopping so much to think, especially when it comes to Chinese products and the Chinese market. So what is the objective of today? It's basically to understand how the Chinese are able to sell so good products in so affordable price. Yeah? How do they do it? To understand this, we need to start from the beginning. We need to understand more or less how works the logic of the Chinese brands when it comes to especially the gear area, that is the part that we are interested in. So most of the Chinese brands works with the logic of multi-brands. So what you know as a Chinese brand, like the case of UX, Joyo, Hotone, Sonic Cake, sometimes they are just sub-brands from a bigger company, from a bigger brand. And they work more or less in the same logic that the consumer goods works globally. So they have one mother brand that has several other smaller brands inside connected to that. This gives to them the possibility to have a much bigger portfolio with so many different target publics, and this helps them, as we're going to see, to improve their costs. I'm going to try to attach here, maybe even here in the editing, you can see more or less how the brands are organized when it comes to the Chinese famous brands that we see on the AliExpress mainly. So as you can see, we have like a big amount of smaller brands, but more or less are connected to 7 or 6 producers itself. And more than this, we need also to understand the concept of OEM and white label, because one of the benefits of having this multi-brand way of working, it allows you to be able to catch also products or production of other smaller producers and make to them via OEM and white label. The OEM is basically when you ask a third-party producer to produce one product that you have developed, as you don't have the skill or the capability to do it by yourself. China is really well known by doing this, as they have majority of the production from almost all the products in the world placed in China. It's really easy for them to acquire know-how and to be able to do really effective production. So if you have an idea of product that you have developed, that you have all the R&D, but you don't have how to produce it, you can find a partner that is going to produce this to you using their productive capacity, their efficiency. So this is basically an OEM. And you have also a second one that is the white label. White labels are basically products that are developed to be sold as a general product. So it's common to see not only in the pedal market, but you're going to find this also in all the electrodomestics market. So if you're going to find, for example, an air conditioning or an electrical scooter, that you see several brands using exactly the same product, just with their brand stamped on it. So this also happens on the pedals market. I think that the most classical example that we can use is the preamp pedals, like the case of the Joyo AC Tone, that you're going to find also the Eating AC Tone, and in some cases even the Harley Benton AC Tone, that are basically the same product, just with their brands stamped on the same thing, probably produced in the same place. So as we understand those three concepts, the logic of working multi-brands, what means to do an OEM and what means to do a white label product. Now let's talk a little bit how they get to those prices, because this is basically the heart of the discussion on what we want to achieve here. To understand the logic of the prices, we need first to understand the pricing logic of a product. I don't want to do a general business video here, but we need to understand that to create a pricing of something, you have basically 4 components that you need to pay attention in. We're talking about material cost, we're talking about transformation or conversion costs, the sale costs, and on the end, the margin. But we're going to see that the margin is just one small part on everything that comes to the final price of the product, okay? In terms of material costs, why China has some benefits when they come to the discussion about how to optimize material costs. Basically, all the parts that comes to the gear world are produced in China. So when we think about logistics costs, it's amazing what they are able to do in terms of optimization, because they're basically selling China to China. And not only the logistic costs, but if you think also about the logic of scale, it's really difficult for you to try to compensate the prices that you're going to have to buy some specific components if you're buying a small patch of components for a boutique company, or if you're buying for a big multi-brand that produces to several types of smaller brands, big containers of that same component. Of course, the prices are going to be much more competitive for this logic of buying more. So China, working with the logic of multi-brands, is able to receive lots of benefits in terms of scale. So for the same quality component, of course, the Chinese company is going to have much better price compared to any other company producing around the world. More than this, you need also to think about the logic of taxation. If you are selling a product for China inside China, so basically doing China to China, you are going to have much better taxes benefits, because then on the end you don't have costs of importation, exportation, plus all the taxes that you would have with logistics and all the things that we know that are natural when you are basically talking about exterior marketing. So in this way, just on the material cost itself, you're going to have already huge benefits on this. But it doesn't stop there. We need also to go to the next one that we think about, the transformation or conversion cost, that is basically the cost of production itself. In the same way as the material, you're going to have also a benefit of scale here. So if you think about a small producer of a boutique pedal, you're going to think about companies that are going to have sometimes between 40 to 50 employees producing in small batches, something a little bit more handmade. And when you think about all the fixed costs that you'd have to have a building, to have a warehouse, how to pay salary for all those people, when you dilute this fixed cost into such small amount of production, naturally you are going to have much more cost for one specific piece produced. But when you think about the logic of a big production, and when we come to those multi-brand, they are able to do a really well conversion of the way of producing that is a handmade to a more continuous production line, you're able to absorb much more fixed costs. So if you're talking about cost of energy, if you're talking about cost of logistics, if you're talking about cost of real estate, all those things, even the labor costs, you're able to absorb in a bigger range of products. And even optimize your productive force, because you guarantee that you always will have demand for those people that are there. You always will have demand for that infrastructure that is fixed, so you don't have the risks of paying for fixed costs without being able to produce something that will be sold. So naturally, you are going to have much better benefit in terms of scale. More than that, you're going to start entering now on the famous taboo of the quality. It's true that when it comes to quality, China still has some steps behind, but let's say that this is a calculated risk. Basically, the way that the Chinese market works, they do a comparison between costs of quality and the cost of non-quality. If you think about the cost of quality, it's all the effort that you would need to put in place to be able to guarantee that your product is going to leave your company or leave the production line 100% according to what is the standard. But if you think that the cost of quality is much higher than the cost of non-quality, and here we think basically about the cost of replacing the piece, or in some cases even losing a sale because you had a product that was defective by someone that bought and doesn't want to buy anymore, when you put this in the scale, if you see that your cost of non-quality it's better than the cost of quality, naturally you're going to bet for the cost of non-quality. And when we're talking about big scale productions, this is basically what the Chinese market does. So it's better for them to have the risk of having some defective pieces in the market, but that on the end, or you basically replace the product to someone, or in some cases you do nothing, and the person that had that defective piece will have a difficult decision to buy again a cheap piece or to decide to buy for a more expensive one on the future. And this again reduces the cost that they have in terms of production. When you think about know-how, majority of the electronic production is placed in China. So again, you have the know-how to produce, you have the know-how also to develop, and in some cases also to copy. In terms of labor law, this is something that is really common to be listening, that the reason why Chinese products are cheap is because China doesn't have a labor law. And here I would like to raise one point. This concept is actually obsolete. It was already before the COVID pandemic, but even after the COVID pandemic, we see that the Chinese labor law, it's being every time more strict. So the fact that China produces with a cheap labor cost, it's not so much connected to the labor law itself and the conditions of production, but it's much more related to the speed of production that the China is able to get. So the power of execution of the Chinese market is really strong. So of course, if you're able to produce faster and more, you're going to be more cheap per piece. So it's not about how much you pay for one person to produce, but it's about how much that person that was paid with the same salary is able to produce. So let's avoid coming to the common sense that, okay, China is able to produce cheap because there is one guy producing in a really poor condition and this is not competitive with an American or European or whatever it is, the country standard production. It's not the case anymore. Okay, so in terms of transformation and conversion costs, I think that here we have lots of points already. But that's not all. You still have the part of the sales cost. So when we come to sales, China also has amazing advantages on that. First of all, because China works a lot with the logic of marketplaces. So basically, you are cutting one step in terms of pricing. You are going basically to eliminate the retailer. And this makes you to remove one step that should somehow be able to receive profit. And this is, again, being able to be converted to the price of the product. If you're selling straight from the producer to the final customer, you're actually receiving lots of benefits on that in terms of cost reduction. More than that, you're not going to see big marketing campaigns for Chinese products because the low cost itself, it's already their strategy of marketing. They don't need to do big marketing campaigns because once you find a good product in a low cost, you have lots of spontaneous marketing, and this is basically what we are doing here. YouTube is a huge channel. For China, maybe it's the best channel in terms of marketing them. They're receiving free marketing, and all the producers of content are also receiving their bucks because they're being able to sell by affiliated market and also by receiving views in the YouTube. So this dynamic of win-win makes that they don't need to invest so much in marketing. And coming back to the case of the multi-brand, they also have one benefit in terms of the diversification of the portfolio. So if we think, let's use a good example here. If we think about Hotone, Sonicake, Valiton, you're going to be able to find simple, cheap products, like is the case of some smaller pedals, like an ABY box from the Sonicake, and you're going to be able to find an amazing multi-effects, like is the case of the Ampero Stage, that is in a completely different range of products and range of portfolio. So being able to diversify the portfolio guarantees that you're going to have a benefit from all the sides, from people that want to spend less, from people that maybe are able to spend a little bit more but doesn't want to buy a boutique thing, and in some cases even entering to those really high level and high quality products. So you have since the premium products until the ultra budget ones being covered inside the same logic of company and benefits. And finally, you have the most basic thing that we always say, that is the case of the warranty. So it's going to be really difficult for you to find a policy of warranty for those products. So naturally, you're going to have some benefits on that. I'm not saying that you're not going to have 100% warranty, because sometimes you're going to have a warranty in terms of the sales. So the seller that is giving to you the product, they are able to cover part of this warranty by providing you back a new product in case you're going to have it broken. But in terms of production itself, they don't have a policy of warranty. So this also saves them some bucks in terms of production cost. Is that all? Actually, no. And we come to the point that most of the people think, okay, China is able to produce with a lower cost because they're not greedy. And actually, this is not 100% accurate. The margin is just one small part inside the full pricing, as we saw. But it's true that even on the margin, the Chinese market is able to have lots of benefits, because the logic of absorption of market that works with China, it's completely different from the full world. Companies are able to operate with negative margins for years, as long as they are able to grow market share. as long as they are able to achieve some targets that the Chinese government gives to them in terms of employment, in terms of taxation payment, in terms of revenue, even if you're going to have a negative margin, the government is able to sustain the company running for a long period. So this guarantees to them the possibility to break the market in some specific cases. So if you think that you have a huge portfolio that works with premium products to really ultra budget products, and that in some of those products you can have even negative margins to guarantee that you're going to have really positive margins in other ones, you have a really interesting and sustainable way to maintain the business competitive independently of how much margin you're going to have in one specific product. And this is maybe the biggest challenge that the boutique companies will have. The logic of boutique, it's not the logic of mass production. Basically, the boutique, we're talking about a much shorter amount of pieces produced in a really high standard with a really high differential of quality, of service, of presenting, of branding. And this brings in itself value for the brand that you are selling. But to be able to sustain a company like this, naturally, you need to guarantee that you're going to have a minimum margin, because we're not talking about being able to sell millions of pieces in a year. We're not talking about incomes of billions. We are talking about smaller profits that are able to sustain smaller companies, in most of the cases local ones, that are running their own products and creating their own developments, their own R&D, by creating know-how locally. So the logic of competition between boutique companies and big mass producers, like is the case of the China brands, it's completely different. But what we are seeing, and this is something that I would like to talk a little bit in one next video, it's how these two markets are starting to get in a clash. Because basically what China is doing, they are taking boutique products and they're exactly converting this into mass production products. In some cases, not using 100% loyal ways of doing, like is the case of the branding and the case of copyrights. But these we're going to treat in a little bit different video that I'm going to talk specifically about that. Okay, I think that we already have a pretty long video. I hope that with that you were able to understand why China is able to produce. This tries to demystify a little bit the thing about, okay, it's cheap because it's low quality. This is not true. Of course, as I was talking here, maybe you are going to get a defective piece, but this doesn't mean that all the products produced in China are actually poor quality or a bad efficiency. So I think that this should help some of you to be a little bit less afraid of spending some bucks on those products. And if I convinced you and you got interested on that, I have a really good opportunity to you. So AliExpress is entering today in the outdoor fun sale, and they have amazing offers. So basically, together with the promo codes that we are offering for all over the globe, you're able to get up to 70% discount in some of the pieces. So it's a really interesting opportunity to spend less to get a really good amount of products. I'm going to leave here in the link below attached our purchase center link, and there you're going to be able to find the products list that we have curated and that we have found as the best offers to you. I hope that you are going to enjoy these ones, and as always, if you're going to purchase using one of our links, you're basically helping this channel to have a longer life. I hope this video was helpful to you somehow. As always, I would like to ask you to consider subscribing to the channel, leaving the like button here, and I'll catch you on the next. Keep on rocking!